Welcome to the Champs App podcast. Champs App is your recruiting and development copilot. If you are a player, parent, or coach, make sure to check out more content and tools to help navigate the world of youth hockey at champs.app. Also, if you've listened to the Champs App podcast in the past and it has helped you with your recruiting or hockey development, please tell your teammates and friends about Champs App. It would be even better if you subscribe to the podcast and review or rate us on whichever platform you're listening to or watching us on. On today's episode, we get an update on the University of Michigan's plans to start a D1 women's hockey program. We welcome back Jenna Trubiano, who was the head coach of the women's club team and is now a strategic advisor to the group working on this project. This was a highly informative discussion, as many details have not been publicly available until now, so please enjoy. Tired of spending hours emailing coaches with no idea if they're even reading your messages? Champs App Messaging is here to change that. It's the fast, easy way to contact coaches with tools that cut your email time by more than 50%. You'll know when your emails are opened, and you'll avoid common mistakes thanks to smart templates that pull info directly from your Champs App profile. One parent told us, "What used to take us a whole evening now takes under 2 hours." Another said, "It was exciting to know a coach actually read the email." If you're sending 10 or more emails, try Champs App Messaging. It'll save you time, reduce errors, and give you real recruiting insight. You can check it out for free in Champs App. I'm thrilled to welcome back Jenna Trubiano to the podcast, the former head coach of the University of Michigan women's hockey club team, where she built a culture of excellence, community, and competitive success. Now she's playing a pivotal role in helping bring NCAA Division I women's hockey to Ann Arbor, serving as a strategic advisor in the effort to elevate the program to varsity status. Hi, Jenna. Can you believe it's been over 3 years since you were first on the podcast, back on episode 44?
I can't believe it. Thanks for having me on again.
Well, really delighted to have you here, especially under these circumstances. This is the reason why we want to be having you back on. There's been some progress on what's been going on with Michigan and getting a D1 team. We're going to get to that in a moment. But since we last spoke, let's just talk about some of the things that you've been doing since then. I saw that you were the assistant coach at the World University Games. Maybe just tell us what that's all about, what your role was, and maybe how the team did.
Yeah, the World University Games, it was in January of this year, so 2025. And I was selected as an assistant coach under head coach Lindsay Ellis, who's the head coach at Arizona State University, and had the pleasure of working with her for the first time in my career. And we took a group of American ACHA women's hockey players that I think they had
club players, right? Those are club players?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Club hockey players to Torino, Italy to compete in the World University Games, which is the second international event to the Olympics. So it was a really great experience. We got to stay in the old Olympic dorms in Torino, like the athlete housing, which was really cool to have that experience. And yeah, we were in Italy for about a week and a half, and before that staged in Albany for a couple days. So it was a very quick experience, but we had a really great group of players.
Gotcha. And where were the players from?
So the players were selected by an ACHA selection committee that was comprised of the World University Games coaches, as well as representatives from every league. So we went through the top American players in the ACHA. Coaches provided insight. We had coaches also submit recommendations as well and selected our roster from there. So Michigan had 6 players that were selected. Arizona State had 5. Adrian, I think, had 2 players selected. But really players from around the league that we thought would be a great fit for the locker room as well as on the ice.
Beautiful. All right. And how did it go? How did you do?
We did well. Obviously, we competed against teams that had been training together for probably years, and we tried to throw a group together for a couple weeks. So we ended up in 5th place. I think we would have all liked to do better, but given the circumstances, we did well. But yeah, it was a great group on and off the ice. No issues from my perspective. So it was nice to have a positive off-ice experience as well.
That's awesome. So those are one of those experiences that you never forget for the rest of your life, and you tell your kids about, right? So.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so let's get to some Michigan stuff. So the last time I saw you in person was at the NIT tournament in Minnesota in October 2023.
That's
And at that
correct.
time, I had just several days before was at Michigan for a reunion event. For the folks who don't know, I did my grad school at Michigan, and then I had heard while I was there from a key person who we both know who I'm talking about, that this key person had changed his mind and was now open to there being a women's team if the men's team and Yost Arena was not negatively impacted in any way. So then a few months later, the feasibility study was launched. And so maybe just walk us through the timeline that kind of started happening in early 2024.
Yeah. I'll even back it up before the Regents meeting. So in February of 2024, there was something that happened to me in like an adult hockey game, and I had posted about it, and it wasn't to call out the people that did it to me, but it was more of like bringing awareness to like
Yes, and it went
this is a
viral.
problem.
It went
Yes, it
very
did go
viral.
viral, and I was advised that it would probably go viral, and it did, which I think was great because a lot of other women reached out to me saying they've experienced similar things. And that turns out it was a piece of the puzzle. And, it Regent Illich had reached out to me and,
And explain to
checking
folks
in
who
on.
Regent Illich is. So that's important
Yes,
piece of
Regent Denise
information.
Illich is a regent at the University of Michigan. She was actually reelected in November of this last year for a new term, which is 8 years. So the regents of the University of Michigan are elected by the residents of the state of Michigan to make decisions on behalf of the university, because Michigan is a public institution. So I think there are some regents up for reelection this year. So because Michigan is a public institution, they're governed by the Board of Regents.
Yes, and Denise Illich is part of the Illich family that owns the Detroit Red Wings and Little Caesars. And so obviously very much a hockey kind of dynasty within the state of Michigan. And so obviously her voice carries a lot of weight when it comes to hockey at the University of Michigan.
Yes. So she had reached out to me and we were just kind of talking about like, why is this happening? And I was like, well, like, we have 7 men's D1 programs in the state of Michigan and 0 for women. Like, we have really good girls programs that develop collegiate hockey players and Olympians, and they go out of state. And, we don't have anything to keep them here after that. And then it trickles down to coaching. Like, you try to get young coaches involved, and it's just the systemic issue. So we were kind of just talking about that. And shortly after that was the Regents meeting in March, where Regent Illich went on the record to publicly support varsity women's hockey at the University of Michigan. And I think that's when the push for a feasibility study was officially announced as well, or a request for the feasibility study. So all of that happened very quickly. And then I believe in May, the study was actually initiated. So obviously there were some pieces, getting the right people together and kind of going through that process. And the expectation is that the study would be completed in the fall.
Want to know how USA Hockey really evaluates players? Don't miss an exclusive Champs Plus webinar featuring Olympic gold medalist and USA Hockey head scout Haley Skarupa, Thursday, May 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. She'll walk you through the full tryout and evaluation process for USA Hockey Players Development Camp, plus expert advice for players and parents with a Q&A session. It's free for Champs Plus subscribers. Visit champs.app to register and submit your questions in advance. That's champs.app, your hockey recruiting and development co-pilot. All right, so let's just talk about this because there's some stuff that you don't know about that I kind of did, which was, like you said, the feasibility study was expected to be released in the fall, But September came around, October came around, I didn't hear anything. November, December, January. Finally, I said, okay, they definitely got the feasibility study done. They just haven't released it yet. So I actually emailed a different regent, Jordan Ocker, who has expressed a full-throated, support of women's hockey at Michigan, and he never emailed me back. This was January 28th. And then a couple of days later, College Hockey News then published their article after receiving a copy of the feasibility report via the Freedom of Information Act, because as a public institution, you can request to find out anything about the school, especially if they're spending money on it. So maybe you just talk about that, the Collegiate Sports Associates feasibility study, how it came out, why it came out that way, etc.
Yeah. From my perspective, I think everybody knew people were going to try and FOIA for the feasibility study, and it's very common for Michigan information to get released that way because it is so high demand. So I know there were some people that were FOIAing for the feasibility study, so I knew eventually it was going to happen. Typically, the process takes quite some time. From what I've heard, I've never done it myself, but I think because it was a topic that was top of mind for many people in our community, the expectation is that it was going to be FOIA'd, and that's exactly what happened. So yeah, I think that was end of January, beginning of February is when that first article came out.
Yeah, so maybe just talk about what's actually in there. I know there is a huge amount related to costs, operating costs and capital costs. Maybe just talk about those, and I can bring in the numbers, as you just talk in general about what the details.
Yeah, I don't have it pulled up. I don't have it in front of me. But essentially the summary of the study is, there are a few paths forward. This is option A. This is what option A would cost all the way through option B, option C. So option A would be, sort of like bare bones, add on to Yoast, which is a single sheet. So the men and women would be sharing a facility. And then option C would be, or option 3 would be a new facility for the men, new facility for the women. So obviously there are financial implications on each end of the spectrum. And again, I don't have the study pulled up, but
I believe the range is somewhere between $50 million to do a renovation up to $300 million for a brand new facility.
yes.
And, it would be a rink with about 8 to 10,000 in seating capacity, similar to what Mariucci Arena is all about.
Yes.
So, and then you didn't mention this, but there's also the operating costs of the annual budget, which is about $4.5 million in expenses. They estimate about $400,000 in revenue for the women's team. So net about a 4.1 annual budget that they would also need for the operating the team. So generally speaking, does that feel about right?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Okay. So what's your perspective on how they're going through this, where they are in the process of evaluating these opportunities, and how they move forward from here?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, we're in a good spot. We've got the study. I was just down in Bonita Springs at the AHCA convention, which is the American Hockey Coaches Association convention. So a lot of the D1 coaches, D3 coaches, administrators, some ADs are down there, conference commissioner, just everybody that's involved in college hockey is usually down there. So I was just down there this past week, had some really good conversations following up on conversations I had last year when I was down there after they announced the initiation of the feasibility study. And obviously people have questions too, which is great because I love questions. There are some I don't have answers to, but I love talking about this. And yeah, I think, the study has been public now for 3-4 months at this point now. Pretty accessible in terms of information, so people are asking questions about the facility and whatnot. We have the house settlement that was pushed back. That was also referenced in the study as well.
Maybe you want to explain what the house settlement thing is, and
yes,
maybe I can help you out if you need it.
Yes. So with the house settlement, the University of Michigan may have to end up paying former student athletes for name, image, and likeness. And then there's also the other piece too about the roster limits and scholarships.
Yeah.
So
And it's been highly contentious, and the judges
yes,
taking her time and being
yes,
very specific about her needs of making sure that not only all parties are figuring this all out in great detail, but it's solving both the short term and making sure there aren't like loopholes or big mistakes happening. So that's why it's been kind of taking a long time, because it is a very complex subject. So what's your role?
So my role, I would say my role this past week was to just represent the feasibility study and hear other people's perspective. Obviously talking with Allison Coomey at Delaware, who is just starting their first season, like gaining perspective on that process from her perspective. Um, College Hockey Inc., they were all down there, so it's always great to see them because they were involved in the feasibility study, and also the NHL. All these people, USA Hockey, like they're all down there, and to hear their support and ideas and maybe some ideas to move forward. It's great to have boots on the ground, and what I described my role is kind of mucking it up down there, just kind of wearing the block M and walking around and keeping the conversation alive. I truly believe that just word of mouth and people talking about it will be one of the best things for moving forward and keeping positive momentum. So I was just really down there to muck it up and have great conversations and try to answer questions as best as I can and bring some questions back to Ann Arbor and keep this process moving forward.
Got it. All right. So let's talk about the process. So the two big challenges are going to be money. And the second one, which is probably the bigger one, is just the actual operational details and figuring out where stuff is going to go if you're going to build a new arena, because there's very limited space on campus, and you're going to have to, anytime you do something, you're going to, there are downstream consequences for who's getting affected by it. And you got to work through that whole process, which is non-trivial, as any president of the schools has found out over the last 20 years as they try to do anything. So once again, if the budget is around $300 million to actually build a new facility, I know that St. Thomas has been building a new facility that's going to be launched this fall. It's about $175 million. They raised about $75 million from Lee and Penny Anderson, who the facility is going to be named after. It's also going to be used for basketball and concerts, not just hockey. And they also kind of got gifts of $1 million, some even $5 million. What's your perspective on, like, is Michigan going to be able to raise $300 million? And where's it going to come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know that part of the reason I went to Michigan versus some other opportunities that I had was because of the alumni network and the passion that Michigan students and alum have for Michigan athletics. Um, so yeah, I feel, and obviously we haven't gotten to that point, but I think there is interest in supporting a women's program or a new facility. So I feel optimistic about it. I know I have a vision for this and what this should look like and what it can look like. So I'm hoping I can share that vision with people that want to invest in women's sports and Michigan athletics and make this a reality. Um, what I don't want to happen is what happened to Wayne State in 2011, which was our last NCAA D1 program. They skated out of City Arena, which is where I played Little Caesars, and there were some former Little Caesars players that were on that team. And yeah, just like hearing about their experience and that being the last D1 program and it sort of folding right in front of your face, it's pretty disheartening. So yeah, I just want to make sure we get it done the right way. And obviously there's a lot of momentum with women's sports in general right now and the PWHL expansion and providing opportunities for women's hockey players at every level seems to be growing. And I think we need to be a part of that. So I feel really good. I feel really optimistic.
Looking for a smarter way to navigate college hockey recruiting? Meet Champs GPT, your personal AI recruiting assistant built specifically for college hockey. Powered by over 4 years of Champs app insight, including over 100 podcasts, expert webinars, and deep dive articles, Champs GPT gives you instant, tailored answers to your biggest questions, like which summer showcases or camps should I attend? How do I know if a school is interested in me? What should I ask a coach on a recruiting call? Just tap the Champs app logo if you're a Champs Plus subscriber and get expert guidance anytime, anywhere. Subscribe to Champs Plus today and unlock the power of Champs GPT. And if I remember correctly, when the PWHL played a game at Little Caesars Arena, it did quite well and showed the level of interest in women's hockey in the Detroit area, at least, right? So.
Yes, last year, 2024, we broke the US record. And then for this season, for the takeover tour, Denver broke the old Detroit record, and then Detroit broke the Denver record. So Detroit has the record for both seasons and overall.
And the record for records, obviously. So
yeah.
All right. So, $300 million compared to St. Thomas, which is probably doesn't have the same alumni network and clearly not the same brand at the athletics level that Michigan has. You would think $300 million is a reasonable nut, especially with the Ilitch family going behind it and their network of folks who they could probably bring in to help make this all happen. So let's get to the money question. Jenna, when is the team going to hit the ice?
That is the money question, not related to money. We have some things to figure out still. The study was just, I guess, released publicly via FOIA. So in terms of timeline, there's no timeline yet.
Okay. So related to this, there have been some things in the news as it relates to Michigan the last week or so. Santa Ono, who is the president and a big supporter of women's hockey, also happens to be Canadian, has decided to resign and go to Florida for a variety of reasons. I think some folks at Michigan actually think that might not be a bad idea, as well as, there's an issue with one of the football coaches being under investigation. I'm curious, does any of these big items, have any impact on the women's team in any way?
From my perspective, they don't. We've been moving in a forward direction really since last year, and things have honestly gone a little bit quicker than I thought they would, which is great. We have the feasibility study done that outlines the path forward, or which path forward. So from my perspective, it doesn't. With the PWHL expansion, like we talked about, they added 2 teams this year. Who knows what may happen next season? I know they're taking that very seriously and want to do it the right way, which is, I know what Michigan wants as well. So I think we have the right people involved and the right pieces in place to get this done. It's just, how are we going to move forward and how do we get there?
Got it. Is there the option to start playing at another facility, specifically like the Cube, which is nearby? I know the U.S. National Training and Development Program, the boys were there for many years. They moved to Plymouth, but obviously they could play, games in front of fans there, and that might be a short-term solution, at least for the women. Is that an option? What's your perspective on, at least in the short term, playing out of a, not such a great facility, but it actually, in reality, is probably not that different than the Ohio State University arena. So,
yeah, I think all options are on the table at this point. It's going to be, how do we get it done the right way? With maybe playing at a facility off campus, you can promise a new facility, but obviously things change, as and they're changing right now. So I think we all want to make sure it gets done the right way. So being able to control what we can control is something that we're thinking about as well.
Got it. So I'm going to mix my metaphors here. So as you look into your crystal ball and you put the cart before the horse, what would the player strategy be for a team? Because if you don't start recruiting players starting this June 15th, the top players for 2027, so September 2027, are already going to be committed, in the next few months. So if you start either in 26 or 27, those top players are already committed. So you're either going to need to get players who aren't committed, or you're going to really have to go after players on other teams via the transfer portal. Have you thought about that in terms of this whole process, or is that once again a little bit too early to think about that at this time?
And I think it's a little too early to think about that at this time. Obviously, the transfer portal has changed things for many people, including players. And I know there are some coaches that primarily recruit out of the transfer portal. So things have changed since I was a player. And yeah, I think once we know more about a timeline, that will start to evolve into the recruiting process.
All right. And once again, now this one I won't put you on the spot, but how do you think about bringing on a coaching staff, and who would be interested, and who the right people would be to start the program up?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to be competitive. It's Michigan, so I think everybody knows it's going to be a competitive process.
Okay. And when on the men's side, when Penn State started their men's program about a dozen years ago or so, thanks to the Pagula family, that created the opportunity for on the men's side to actually create a Big Ten conference. Unfortunately, that was kind of at the expense of some top teams leaving the CCHA. But with Penn State in the AHA, and then three Big Ten teams in the WCHA, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Ohio State. You're being the fifth, you would need a sixth team. So, maybe Michigan State, would be coming around. So what are the thoughts on leveraging this opportunity at Michigan to actually create not only a Big Ten conference, but also, at least a second team in Michigan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm Michigan born and raised, and from my perspective, the more the merrier. It's overdue. Hopefully, what we're doing over here in Ann Arbor is sparking conversation elsewhere, which with the growth in women's sports and women's hockey as well, like we've talked about, I hope people are talking about it. Um, it's not a secret that college sports are going to be changing. They're already changing. So obviously that's going to have an impact at some institutions, if not all of them. But yeah, I'd love to see growth at every level. So if another team came up in the state of Michigan, I'd love it.
If because obviously you've competed against the club teams at Michigan State. Are they in kind of the same boat, trying to advocate on their campus as well for a women's team?
As far as I know, they are not.
Okay. Well,
I might be out of the loop. So
okay. Well, now's a good opportunity for them to start and saying, "Hey, we don't want to be too far behind." And also, I did have Peter Erlander when he was the associate head coach of Ohio State on the podcast a little while ago. He's since retired, but when I did ask him about Michigan getting a team, his response was, "Bring it on! Like let's get that rivalry going. It'll be great for both schools and for women's hockey." What's your perspective on being able to play Ohio State if that ever happens?
I mean, it would be incredible. It's like the biggest rivalry in college sports, in my opinion. And Ohio State's success has been pivotal in conversations at Michigan because when they've won the national title, whatever I can't remember what it was, a couple of years ago.
They won in 2024. They won in 2024 and in 2022, I believe. So
yes, okay. So it was 2022 and in 2024, but when people see that Ohio State won a national championship and they're Michigan fans, they always look to, how did Michigan do? If Ohio State won, how did Michigan do? Oh, we don't even have a team. Like, we're not even competing at the same level. And that was very important for women's hockey to get on their radar. And then obviously they won again in 2024, and Wisconsin is literally right there too. And they're another Big Ten school, and Minnesota has historically been so strong, and Penn State's getting better every year. And those are becoming the top destination schools, and they compete in the WCHA, which is with the exception of Penn State. But Like, that's the top conference, and they're having success. Like, they're the best of the best. So it's just those have been pieces to the puzzle in the conversations that we're having is like, Ohio State's doing it. Like, why can't we do it? Like, everybody wants to beat Ohio State. I have to cheer for Ohio State right now, which hurts me a little bit, but like that's that's how we're going to continue conversations if Ohio State keeps winning. So, yeah, it's really exciting to hear that people
Perfect.
recognize that the rivalry could bring so much to women's hockey.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that like all the pieces are coming together. I know when you and I first met, we were just talking about, because there was very little traction, and it's amazing how not only getting traction, like the snowball effect is starting to come in, both what's going on in the environment, what's happening in the women's league, and then what's actually happening on campus. So it's nice to
Yeah.
see all the pieces of the puzzle starting to come together. So we covered a lot of territory, Jenna. Is there anything that we missed?
I think the biggest thing for me is like keeping the conversation alive. And if people have questions, they're free to reach out to me. Email is usually the best way, which is my last name, Trubiano@umich.edu. I'm happy to really talk about anything I can at this point. Like I said, keeping the conversation alive is really important to me. And yeah, I'm just thankful for your time today.
Perfect. And you also have a Champs app profile that people can connect directly with you that way if they're an
They
actual
can.
hockey player, right? So Jenna, thank you so much for doing this. We look forward to having you back on when you have a big announcement that hopefully will be coming, a few months down the road. Well, who knows? But whenever it does, we'd love to have you back on to give you even more details and get into the actual plans moving forward. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for your time.
I really want to thank Jenna for coming on the podcast. It was awesome to get the latest update on Michigan's plans for a D1 women's hockey team. Hopefully, there will be a public announcement with even more details sooner than later. You can connect with Jenna via email or her Champs app profile. Links to both are in the show notes.